Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. You're really going to love today's program. Jose Lugo is with me. Jose has an amazing story. He and his brother have started something called We Are All One Story. It's hard for me to summarize this story. It's fantastic. It's a story of redemption. It's a story of hope. Stay tuned. Jose Lugo, The Good Life, is next. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you've joined us today. GoodLifeTelevision.org is always up. You can see the interviews from the last year, some amazing stories like we have here today. But there's the full form interviews are there, and then there's also what we call power clips, which are kind of some of the great moments and parts of those stories. So check it out, GoodLifeTelevision.org, and you can find us on social media. Today I'm really excited about my guest, Jose.
Hi.
Good to have you, Lugo.
Thanks for having me.
And this is an amazing story, and I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
All the way from Denver.
Yeah.
So just to kind of set the table here, Jose Lugo and his brother Ralph DeQuebec, who's not here with us, but we're going to be having Ralph on the program as well, are two brothers who've kind of had this amazing story, individual stories, which has become something that's called We Are All One. And I want to get to that in a second. But Jose, maybe just start with kind of your upbringing, kind of where you came from, and kind of what your road was like.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the inner city of San Pedro and Wilmington in the county of LA. My parents divorced when I was 5. After the divorce, you know, my household became a very dysfunctional household. And I grew up with a mother who was an extreme disciplinarian, and that was her way of, you know, quote unquote, showing her love. And, you know, from a young age, I think that when you experience abuse at a young age, it taints your heart, and it changes your worldview, and in a lot of ways, it yanks your innocence from you in a premature way. So that happened very young, and that eventually spilled over into my early adulthood. You know, I ended up joining a gang when I was 16, and the violence that I saw within the gang was not too different from the violence I saw at home. It felt like home. It felt like love. I didn't know any better. I ended up going to prison when I was 18 and a half. I got a 5-year sentence for multiple robberies, and there was just more of an extension of the turmoil and the violence and the dysfunction that was in prison, but also that was really just all I knew in a sense. And I ended up doing my prison sentence, and I can't say that I made any plan while I was in there, that I had any big realization or I'm going to change my life when I got out. I couldn't see that far. I was just surviving every day. But during my time in prison, I was able to forgive my mom because I did hold a lot of resentment towards her, and I blamed her for a lot of things, you know. And while I was in prison, I just had the realization. I was able to hear other people's stories, and they would tell me about their upbringing, and the story was the same, you know, absentee dad, dysfunctional household, and there were some stories where the homies didn't even know who their mom is, who their dad is. Maybe they didn't get abused, but maybe their mom was an alcoholic or an addict, and my eyes and my heart were able to open towards my mom after hearing all those stories, and I got to see her just as a person, and I got to see her as somebody who's in her own story, just trying to figure it out, and, you know, realizing that she did the best she could with what she was given. And, you know, that was a big step for me in my life. But I ended up getting out of prison. You know, I did find it in my heart to forgive my mom, you know, because who am I to withhold forgiveness from somebody, especially given the things that I was involved in. But I still had my dad that I needed to forgive for not being there. It's a journey, right? And it's a lifelong journey. And you know, when you grow up, how you grow up in the inner cities with violence and all these things, you know, you need damn near a miracle to change your perception of life. And, you know, by the grace of God, I definitely got my miracle. But it just took a long time. I was still institutionalized in a lot of ways when I was outside of prison. I still saw people as maybe enemies, as I saw people as, if I met a good person, I assumed that they were bad, because that's how I grew up. That's what I had to do to survive, because that's the environment I grew up in, that where people will backstab you, people will hurt you, and these things happen repetitively, and it just solidifies a cynical worldview that, quite frankly, isn't true. It's just that that's all we know in that moment. And I went through life kind of seeing life through that lens of a criminal, of a bad person. And finally, you know, everything came crashing down. You know, I had gone through life thinking that I was a tough guy, that I could get things done on my own, and, you know, I ended up getting into a very deep depression, and really trying to figure out who I was, and not knowing how, not having the tools, you know, to get through that. You know, I was a very prideful person for the bulk of my life. You know, when you grow up with nothing, especially in the hood, what's king in any hood is pride. It doesn't cost you anything. You can feed your ego, that's free, and it's negative, and that eventually brings you down. And that's what happened to me. You know, I thought that I had made it through prison, made it through the streets, all on my own strength. And when I was going through the mental battle, which is purely, in a lot of ways, spiritual, you can't fight that with brute force. You can't power your way through that. And it brought me to my knees, you know, to the point where I wanted to take my own life. And, you know, just thinking about it, it always makes me emotional, because I don't want to forget how that felt, that rock bottom. Because it's intense, and it's intense for a reason. And I thought I was alone. I thought my story didn't matter. I thought my life didn't matter. And I thought it would be best just for me to take my own life. But on the 11th hour, you know, I cried out to God. I said I was sorry, and in that moment I didn't hear a voice. I didn't, you know, there was no great sign, but I did feel a sense of hope. I did feel a glimmer, a very small glimmer of hope, that there was a chance that things could change. And, you know, after that moment, my life did begin to change. And, you know, from that rock bottom, you know, and me realizing that my story had value just because there is no reason needed. And then if my life has value, that means that, you know, my story has value. And, you know, what does that mean exactly? You know, that's a big responsibility, you know, to really live your life knowing that it means something.
Right.
And, you know, from that place came We Are All One Story, and all we do is try and get people to see their inherent value as people, thus the value in their own story.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Thanks, man.
So take me back to that moment again. So you forgive your mom in prison, you come out, you hit a couple bumps, but then you hit a low point of where you're really like, I'm done. Was it like a surrender?
It was definitely a surrender. It's exactly what it was. Realizing that I can't do it on my own. It was a surrender to, it's a surrender to God, and it's, but for me, given my life, it's also, I was never remorseful for the things I had done. And finally, I was just sorry. Like I had, during the robberies, I was always sorry for the innocent people who were involved. always had remorse for that. But I was never sorry for the actual crime, for the stealing, for the robbing, for the lifestyle. I just thought, hey, these are the cards that I was dealt.
Right. You got to do what you got to do.
I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
I've been hurt. If I hurt somebody, this is just part of the game.
Yeah.
So I held on to that. I just wasn't sorry for it. And finally, in that moment of surrender, I had to admit that the entire way that I had lived my life was wrong. And that is a hard realization. And the only way to move forward from that, you need a catalyst.
Yeah.
Because to look back at your life and be 30 years old and be like, man, I had it all wrong.
Yeah.
And, it's just surrendering, knowing that it's not all on me. That all I have to do is, and it's hard. I mean, it sounds, it's dynamically complex what's happening in that moment of surrender. But you just got to put your hands up and say, hey, for me, I just said, hey, I got it all wrong. I'm gonna try doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's been working out for me.
You're an amazing, you're a thoughtful guy. The way you talk, you're very thoughtful and smart.
Yeah.
Just a side note. Hearing you talk, it kind of it reminds me. I think it's in Ezekiel, or I forget where it is, but it talks about I'll take your heart of stone and I'll give you a new heart.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That kind of sounds like what happened to you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like a heart transplant.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But it changes everything. So while all this is happening, your brother, Ralph, goes off to war.
After 9/11, Ralph joined. We have to rewind. He joined the military, joined the Marine Corps after 9/11. So when did he lose his legs? He lost his legs about 7 or 8 years ago. And his life went a different trajectory. I think when you grow up in the hood, the girls go to college, the boys either go to fight for their country or they go and fight for the hood, and they either go to prison or they get hurt overseas, and it's a story we hear all too often. So, mine and his stories kind of did go that way, and he ended up losing his legs.
Is he in Iraq, or where was he?
We lost him in Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
And where his story and my story came back together was, which is kind of a cool story in and of itself. I was in Texas, and he had called me, and he said, yo, bro, I need a roommate. And he was married at the time, and I had just broke up with my girlfriend, so I'm open for whatever, but it's not making sense to me. I don't feel comfortable being a roommate with you and your wife. So
right.
It just went in one ear, out the other. He ended up calling me again before the turn of the new year, before the turn of 2017, and he said, bro, I really need a roommate. And I said, well, what's going on? He said him and his wife are having problems. She's going to move somewhere else, and he wants to try to pursue his dream, making the U.S. Paralympic sled hockey team. He wants to win a gold medal. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, let's go. Let's do it. We literally booked a flight that day, got on the flight a few days later, flew into Denver, looked at a bunch of different places. The last place we saw, we signed the lease. We moved back to our states, packed our stuff, and drove to Denver. And he ended up making the U.S. Paralympic sled hockey team. He ended up winning a gold medal. So mission accomplished on that. But beyond that, where me and him got even, more close was that while I was going through my depression, he was going through his. And as men, we didn't know how to talk about it. We were both going through our own stuff, but just holding it all in. And, when I had that moment of surrender, I just started, a realization I had was I have to just say the truth. There's no shame in the truth, whatever it is. There's only shame in how you deal with it. So all the other stuff I was going through, I just started talking to Ralph about it. And Ralph was like, man, I feel the same way. And You know, he says that he thought a gold medal was going to give him joy. He thought his gold medal was going to make him happy, that he thought that was what he was searching for, what his heart was searching for. And after he won the gold medal, he said that he still felt the same, that he still felt hurt, that he still didn't feel that he had value. And if this is somebody who's an American hero, who's an Olympic gold medalist, if he feels that his own story doesn't have value, how much easier it is for somebody who's growing up in the hood to feel that their story doesn't have value. And we have to realize, we both have the realization and the fact that our value can never be given to us by anything external. That it's inherent in our personhood, in who we are. And, you know, we both started, you know, believing in everything that's good and chasing after that. And, you know, I'm happy to have him in my life, and hopefully we get him on here.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
So he loses his legs in Afghanistan, and you went to prison, and then you end up in an apartment in Denver, Colorado,
Yeah.
talking to each other about life.
Yeah, exactly.
Brothers.
Exactly.
And how did you think of, where did this "We Are All One" story come from?
Well, it just came from that place where, you know, I had hit that rock bottom. I thought my story didn't mean anything. Once I refound the value in my own story by just remembering and believing the simple fact that my story matters because I matter as a person. And, you know, like you said, you need a heart transplant. I just think that's what happened. But, you know, how do we put that in action?
Yeah.
How do we put what we believe in action? And, you know, I just thought about it for a while in my head, man, how can we word it? How can we put it together? How can it be something that we believe in? And it's just, when you're creative, you know, I kind of just let the things float like a soup. And just one day I'm walking and I'm thinking we are all one story. And to me, it's a true statement, and we rolled with it, and it took a life of its own.
Yeah. Story, you know, at this particular time in our country and in the world in a lot of respects, but specifically this year, a lot of people don't feel like they matter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of suicide. There's a lot of anxiety. We're seeing that come to the surface.
Yeah.
So we're going to push this interview out all over the country.
Yeah.
There's somebody watching right now who's where you were, who's thinking, it doesn't matter. I don't matter. I got dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
Life sucks. There's no hope.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
There's always hope. The hardest part is believing. How do you get somebody to believe? And to somebody who feels that their story doesn't matter, it's simply not true. You know it, we all know it. That person knows it. But accept the responsibility of being a person as well. Mm-hmm. You know, rise to the occasion. Like, we're here, we have something good to do. So find out what it is that you love to do and start doing it.
Mm. You matter.
Yeah,
Everybody
you matter.
matters.
Yeah, definitely.
What was jail like?
Oh, man. It was hell on earth, quite frankly. And it's a hell that's created by ourselves. You know, you think we go to prison and we become reformed. You know, that's the farthest thing from the truth. We go to prison and we double down on our bad traits. We refeed our ego. We refeed our pride, because that's all we have. That's all we know. And we make up, you know, because if we wanted to, the inmates, we can make it a utopia, right? It's run by us in a very real way, but instead we go to prison. There's more violence. There's stabbings. There's deaths. There's pride. There's stealing. There's drug dealing. It's like people can't let go. We can't let go of what we know, even though we do know it's bad. It's become normal. So you just find a way to survive. And even in that circumstance, you can still find ways to be joyous. You can still find ways to be grateful. At the end of the day, you have 3 meals a day. This isn't a third world country prison. You know, your family doesn't have to come feed you. You have shelter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything else. And there's some people who go to prison and they do start going on the journey of changing their lives while they're in there. But for the most of us, you know, it's just more of the same.
Have you thought about doing work in prisons?
I think about doing all types of work everywhere. So
Yeah,
prison
well,
is,
tell me about that.
Yeah.
What would you like this to become?
Yeah, so what we do now, we would love, since we do it on a national level, we would love to do it internationally for people to see that, to look beyond a label, to look beyond an appearance, and to see that this person is going through stuff exactly the way you are, for the most part. That our experiences may be different, but the way we feel them are the same. You know, this is what connects us, not necessarily, oh, you live this way. No, how we feel. Like, we all feel the same way. The bond of a mother and a child is the same around the world, you know, and if we focus on the things that bring us together, usually it'll bring us together.
Mm-hmm. You know, I always think, I love the word redemption. I think redeem things that are redeemed, and one of the things that I've in my own life and in experiences have begun to believe is that everything's redeemable.
Yeah.
You know, if the scripture says, I can bring beauty from ashes.
Yeah.
So you look at a pile of ashes in a fire pit and you think, if you believe, like you said, the work is to believe, which is a very biblical principle. The work is to believe.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, actually.
Yeah, it's the hardest.
That's the hard part. But if you believe, then there can be beauty brought from the ashes.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is what's happened here.
Yeah.
You know, that dealt a bad hand, you and your brother, he loses his legs. You're dealing with depression. You're dealing with feeling hopeless. But now, you know, from that low point, from that bottom, you're starting to see beauty come from the ashes.
Of course.
The power of that, I mean, that testimony, that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Very
for
true.
you.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah.
This isn't something you read in a book, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about that message. I mean, I should be on your board of directors, I think. But I mean, it's an exciting message you guys have, because it's real. You have your brothers. You're doing it together, and think about the young people, the prisoners, the gang members, the people that you all can relate to, the veterans who come back and lost their legs.
Yeah.
Think about the people you guys could relate to. And the people who, when they hear the message and they say, well, if these stories can be redeemed, my story can be redeemed.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of the thought?
That is.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. And we know it to be real. You're right. You know, you start believing when you see it in your own life. And, you know, a lot of people are afraid to take that step, but you have to take that step to start trying to live better. And, you know, you got to be okay with what happens, and usually it's good things.
And have you become good at doing that no matter how you feel?
Doing the right thing?
Doing the right thing?
Yeah, there's no other way.
I don't care how I feel. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, is that kind of how it's...
It's exactly how it is. You know, I have the advantage of knowing what doing it the wrong way feels like and looks like. I know that it's very real. The consequences of living life the wrong way are very real. And it's insidious. You think you're getting by, but you're not. Eventually it's going to come for you. And
Did you ever have a relationship with your dad after all this?
Yeah, that was the journey. I ended up forgiving him.
You did?
Yeah. You know, I ended up after I got out of prison, I was back in LA for 2 years, and you know, my dad had always, even though he wasn't around, he had always said that if ever you need a getaway, you can come with me. And I was getting my hair cut one day. I walked out of the barber shop. I see a guy I know. He's got a gun. He lets off like 8 rounds. My friend gets skimmed in the head. He's bleeding. And I was like, man, I got to get off my parole. I don't think I'm going to make it off parole if I don't do anything. So I took my dad on that offer, and I lived with him for about 3-4 years, and we had a lot of talks, and we cried together, and I just saw him like I ended up seeing my mom like another person going through
he's got his own story.
And he's got his very own story. For me, the hardest part was forgiving myself. I didn't know how to do that. And to be honest, that's where the surrender comes in. How do I forgive myself? Who am I? Like, how does that work? Especially when you've been a part of the things that I've been a part of. And, for me and my story, I needed to go to God for my life to change.
Do you feel forgiven by God?
100%.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Thanks.
I'm a big fan. I'm in. Whatever you need.
I'm in.
Jose's book, Jose's memoir is coming out.
Yeah.
Love, Faith, and Violence, a true song and story, set to be released this month or soon.
End of the month, yeah.
End of the month. We're going to buy some copies. Where can people buy that?
You're going to be able to buy it on our website at weareallonestory.net. We'll have a link up there for you, and then we'll also put it on our Instagram shop as well.
Awesome. I'm going to read it.
Awesome.
It's great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Congratulations. Great story.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.